Good evening, Trinidad and Tobago, and all our viewers all around the world. Welcome to Plain Talk. Tonight we have as our guest somebody who is clearly in a comedian mood tonight, former independent, no, former government opposition senator, and well-known criminal attorney at law, Wayne Sturge. Dr. Sturge, Senior Counsel. How are you, sir? Good
No,
evening. Welcome.
well, I'm not a senior counsel, but I'm fine.
Nobody have put your name forward yet?
I didn't apply.
The Chief Justice say you and your clients clogging up the whole system. You're like a one-man wrecking ball. How come you never a silk yet?
Silk has disadvantages, so that you basically might price yourself out of the reach of the ordinary man, and most people I represent are ordinary people.
You're like the penny bank lawyer.
Yeah, so that's not something I would aspire to until I probably get into my 50s or 60s.
Nice. Boss, there are a lot of things going on in the country, and I wanted an attorney who did not mind speaking his mind to touch base on some of those issues. Issues like, right now, we've put into the public space evidence that the Minister of National Security lied to the public at an official press conference. What are the ramifications for that?
Well, there are no legal ramifications unless there's an investigation which uncovers wrongdoing, and then um, what would happen? There would have to be a request for extradition, and then there'll be extradition proceedings if wrongdoing was discovered. But I think there's enough in the public domain to warrant the U.S. authorities looking into um, the transactions. That's the first thing. But locally, um, and regrettably, the only consequences he might face might be political consequences. And in terms with political consequences, normally with egregious lies like the ones he told, one would expect that he would be relieved of his position as a minister. But in this instance, and throw your mind back to 2010, 2015, he called the um, Prime Minister Rowley. He had called for resignations for much less. And now we have behavior on the part of the minister. And um, if you want to be naive, you'll say it's limited to Stuart Young, but it's not. So now we have behavior that um, damages our international reputation. And whether you like it or not, the United States, being not just our biggest trading partner, you have to understand that they police the world. And might is right. So you can be Marxist about it and um, have all these um, principles you want to stand on. But at the end of the day, when you stand on those principles and you cannot trade, then you're in trouble. You'll be
Kite,
hungry and unprincipled.
your kite principles, Wayne. Your kite
You
principles.
can't eat it. And I'm not suggesting you do wrong. I'm not Cambon. Cambon has said, do the wrong thing, just don't get catch, cover your tracks. I'm not suggesting that. You might be legally right in this instance, according to your laws, but the other thing is you violated a treaty which you are a signatory to. That's the first thing. And the second thing, the consequences of your actions could be disastrous for all of us as a people. And going back to what I said earlier, he only called for firings for much less. But the difficulty we face now as a country is that Keith Rowley cannot fire his brain. Stuart Young is his brain. He cannot he cannot dismiss Stuart Young. Stuart Young thinks for him. He doesn't think for himself. Perhaps only on the Gulf Coast. And you see, the thing with that is this. Um, Throw your mind back to, again, 2010 to 2015. What is Rowley's claim to fame between 2010 and 2015? What's the high point of Rowley as opposition leader?
Email,
The high point, Emailgate,
email,
which turns out, yeah, it turned out to be
alive,
a farce. Right.
alive. Status
So,
there is alive.
yeah, a lie, I believe a lie. So, the high point for him as opposition leader, 2010 to 2015, was um, something that turned out to be fraudulent. So from 2015 to now, what is the high point of his leadership? What has he done as a leader? He hasn't done much. He hasn't done anything, if you ask me. He relies on his ministers. He sits back and they'll do what they do. And then when they mess things up, he'll step forward and defend them. And that's what he has always been. That's what Manning used him for. He's a very good talker. He's a very good communicator, and that was always his value. But beyond that, he needs somebody like Stuart Young to think for him, and that is why he cannot fire Stuart Young. But ordinarily, with this sort of behavior, I mean, it's an egregious lie. This one, and rebutted. His assertions were rebutted by the paper trail, the documentary evidence from immigration. But that's not the only lie he's told. He's told several in the last few weeks, and but I just think this one should really be the last straw. The difficulty in Trinidad and Tobago is he'll pay only a political price, and in Trinidad and Tobago that means very little. So
The,
that
the, the, que-
he may very well be returned to Parliament.
you see, the question I asked you at the start is because the public looking on, unqualified in politics or law, may be trying to understand that if they were in the position and they did something similar or not even, in fact, not even as bad, that they would have paid a heavy price, but that
Yeah,
there seems to be no circumstance, no system, nobody who's supposed to trigger an investigation. You are the Minister of National Security. To a question put to you, you lied to the public who pays your salary. How is that not misbehavior in public office? And before you answer that, is misbehavior in public office a real thing at that level?
in politics, let me give misbehavior in public office would usually occur when you commit a crime, but it doesn't fit the definition of the particular criminal offense that you have in mind. So that if you charge for that specific criminal offense, you'll fail before the courts and the person would be acquitted because of the um, definition and the elements of the particular offense that you have in mind that you obviously would have violated. So sometimes in law, you may have done something and you ought to be charged, but because of the available evidence, you can't be charged. And in that setting, the um, authorities usually rely on the common law offense of misbehavior in public office. The English call it misconduct in public office. So that it would, and when you look at how the common law has developed the offense of misbehavior, it basically captures wrongdoing where you know it is wrong in law, but you'll escape because of the technical definitions for the offense with which you should be charged. So, but in this instance, um, it is misbehavior in a sense, but the way the common law has developed, again, you can't charge him because you have to first identify a substantive offense for which you intend to charge them, and then you realize that you cannot come within the definition of the offense, and therefore you use the broader common law offense of misbehavior. But there's no offense in terms of a criminal offense that we can identify. And because there's no identifiable criminal offense, substantive criminal offense, you can't rely on misbehavior.
Let's look at the matter of Anand Ramlogan and David West. That is pretty
Mm.
much a he say matter. Now, I know that's before the court, we ain't going into it too deep. But because that
Mm.
existed, the PNM machinery brought the noise and made it almost impossible for Anand Ramlogan to continue. Stuart Young is 100,000 times more guilty. He is actually guilty of an offense, if not in law, in respect for office, where he, in answering to the public, he lied to the public, and he's lied repeatedly. And he's built lies upon lies, where right now, it's not just one lie. He's been lying to cover up, and the paper trail that he did not expect to come out and out him exists. And I want to know, how is it so difficult for those opposed to the PNM to bring the same noise? In fact, the PNM seems to be good at making the narrative that if you are talking about this, you're committing treason in Trinidad and you're selling Trinidad out to the Americans.
Yeah. Um, I cannot refer to the case against Ram Logan, but what was in the public domain at the time would have forced his resignation. It was one word against the next, and it brought about a resignation.
That's,
And
that's all I'm
um,
talking about.
I'm not right. So in that context, I'll talk about it. But there are other instances where it was based on one person's word against the other, and it led to resignations and so on, without evidence, without charges. So that wouldn't be Ram Logan, right? Wouldn't talk about his case. Yeah, a number of cases, a number of allegations that were in the public domain from 2010 to 2015, and up to now there are no charges.
I think
But
the most famous one prior to those was the Chief Magistrate versus the Chief Justice.
well, you mean with Mark Nichols, that one? But you see, the thing is, you'll have a lot of talk, and that is, you see, the PLM understands that politics is the PNM understands that perception is reality. So the PNM will demonize you and say that you own a mall in Holland. It's easy to find out if you own a mall in Holland, but they'll never bring any documents to show you own a mall in Holland because you don't. And it reminds me of Cuthbert Joseph telling me years ago how a certain high-ranking PNM member, there were questions about his sexuality, and the way things unfolded, they would get the biggest jammets in the neighborhood to come and say, "No, he not gay. I had sex with him, and he's a real man, and he well big, and he tire me out for hours and all that." They're very good at that. And then when that particular high-ranking member, this is 1980s I'm talking about, when that high-ranking member fell out of favor with the political directorate, um, then all of a sudden you started hearing rumors that the man was gay. And then you would have people come in to say, yeah, he's gay. I saw him at X place picking up a cross dresser by the Oval and, and all this jazz. And that is
And
what
when
the PNM does.
that's what they do. Anne Marie Dulal, our chief research officer, she refers to it as bringing the noise. I said it to somebody last night in an interview
Hmm.
that that's what the PNM is good at, and you cannot fight PNM by any other rules than those rules. And the other day, we put into the public space information that the current Minister of Finance is trying to buy a multi-million dollar US dollar sports car. And we showed pictures of the car. And he said he's not buying any such car. and he's not reserving PEA1 for himself because they're making sure I don't get PEA1, but he's not
Yeah.
reserving it for himself. I asked him, if you're not buying the car, prove it. So people tell me, but that is a stupid question. You can't prove a negative. I say for all of 2010 to 2015, the PNM have framed every argument from that position, especially Emailgate. If Emailgate is not true, prove it. And
Well,
that,
let
and
me tell
that
you.
cost the opposition because the opposition is not prepared to get into the street fight that the PNM is, it cost them office.
Well, listen. The better way, and this is how you respond to things like that, is Imbert said it's not true. Okay, you don't ask him to prove a negative. What you point out is, had it been false, he would have sent out a pre-action or he would have sued,
Yeah, they could have
right?
done.
Had it been false, but he hasn't done that. So, is it that your revelation may have stopped him in his tracks from buying the sports car and reserving PA1? Maybe that is what occurred. We don't know. But if somebody has lied on you, one expects that you would issue a pre-action protocol letter to protect your reputation, and you would file a lawsuit or whatever. But if he hasn't done that, then the question is still up in the air, right? But you see, the thing that the PNM has done that from, I don't want to say 2010 to 2015 because that has always been the case. Um, Eric Williams, it's no mystery to how this thing has been set up. A PNM education doesn't teach you to think; it teaches you to regurgitate facts. That's it. So once and in growing up, you hear things as facts and you believe it until you get evidence that it's false. So we grew up believing that Columbus discovered Trinidad because he saw three mountains down in Meru and it was a lie. You grow up, Trinidad Carnival is the greatest show on earth. It's not. But we believe that. So we regurgitate it. It's a lie. We tell you, if that's the case, we should be one of the richest countries on the earth. Selling pitch. That's also a lie. But the thing is, those are not the only lies. So you grow up and right in the students' companion, I remember learning about different Calypsonians and you held them in high esteem and you grow up being um, subjected to this culture, which they say is a design for living. And you grow up with reverence for these Calypsonians and you think they are much more than they actually are. And then you grow up into thinking that this culture is our culture and we have to believe in it and so on. So whatever the Calypsonians preach to you, you believe that. You don't bother to think that they're talking
Beyond it.
shippiness or they're singing for a supper like Coco and the rest of them. You don't bother. And that is PNM education. So those who made it out of that and got into levels and bachelor's degrees and so on, they didn't make it because of a PNM education. They made it in spite of a PNM
I've heard,
education.
I've heard that.
And that's the problem with Trinidad. So that is why um, base politics survives. That is what keeps a third party out of contention. So you have the tribal thing. You have you even in the churches. The government will align themselves with the churches and the pastors and give them money and so on and so on. And one hand don't clap, one hand they slap. So they align themselves, and then next thing you hear the pastors in church demonizing Hindus and those who worship idols and so on and so on. And right away you are turned off of um, anything other than the PNM, where the PNM continues to enslave you. The PNM has replaced massa. That is what Eric Williams wanted, and that is what he did. He simply replaced the personalities. So he became the new massa, and he has done very little for this country. He was a very diabolical man, and he continues to rule today. Up to today, you still feel the effects of
You
the rule of Eric Williams.
you ever hear
Mhm.
how actual PNM members, this is what I don't understand. Wait, explain this to me, right? If I talk about Fatima College is across the road from Mokorapo Secondary, and that Fatima College is a prestige school and Mokorapo Secondary is the acknowledged most failed school in Trinidad and Tobago. How could 15 feet of pitch separate two schools that are under the same Ministry of Education, teaching the same curriculum, have the same teachers from the same teachers training college getting the same funding? How could one be a prestige school and the other one be failed? And the people
Mhm.
who, the parents and the communities where the children come from, are usually the blackest of people. And I don't understand how in this country the grandchildren of Africa are so horrible to each other. I don't understand that.
Because I'll say we, because I'm mixed and my father is black. I'll say because we sell out each other. It hasn't changed. The English and the Spaniards, they bought slaves because other Africans sold other Africans. They have a handful of educated blacks, and they align themselves with the PNM. They know better. Their education would enable them to know that the PNM is not the way. But for the sake of self interest, they align themselves
I'm
at the
asking
expense of the rest.
from the top down, okay? I'm not defending nobody, but wrongdoing has been done in this country in the name of commerce and business from day dot. And the saying behind every great wealth there's a great crime couldn't be truer anywhere else in the world than Trinidad. And I couldn't believe the bloodlust to pull down Lawrence Dupre, Carlos John, and Jack Warner. I couldn't believe the bloodlust to pull them down. The same people will defend others who are not of their pigmentation and hold them up and defend them in ways that make me think back that we've never left the plantation, that Master's still in charge in Trinidad. How did
Very
we
much.
move? How did we move in the 80s from French Creole dominance to Arab dominance in Trinidad and Tobago, and the African mass of people have not moved forward? When Peter George Sr. said, "We are 5,000, but we are the most powerful," and I contrasted that to the 500,000 people, grandchildren of Africa, who without their labor and their consumption, Peter George carried himself cloth in the country. And I'm wondering what makes this work? What holds this up in Trinidad and Tobago? I had an article that I wrote, and if I knew we were going to discuss this, and I asked Janice to send it. Because Africans don't own banks and they don't own malls and they don't own car companies and they don't own the construction industry and they don't own the food empire and they don't own fast food. They don't own nothing of value in the food chain of the economy, but their consumption and their labor upholds all business. How is that? How is that like that? When I ask, Morva, Beetham, Laventille, Sealots, Rich Plain, Covine, River Estate, Bagatelle, Abbey Pujad, Big Yard, Scorpion, Point Cumana, Never Dirty, Cocorite, Gonzales, Belmont, Harding Place, St. Peter's. We ain't even leave the West. We ain't even leave the West, Nelson Street, East Port of Spain, with East Dry River, Piccadilly. We've not left the West. The only benefits that the grandchildren of Africa have gotten from the PNM seems to be ghetto living and perpetual poverty. How? How does that continue? How?
Well, it continues because we want it to continue. But you see, the system is set up in such a way. You look at the captains of industry, look at the chambers of commerce, the bankers association, all of these things, how they are set up, and they pretend to be um, apolitical. They say they're not involved in politics, but it turns out to be a lie. And at some point, you'll see they move out of private enterprise and they join a political party, and it always happens to be the PNM, the, the one that replaced Massa. And it's structured in such a way, and a simple example, it's structured in such a way that the bank would give you, as a black man, money to buy a car. You miss one payment, two payments, they come and they take it back from you. They'll grudgingly lend you money to buy a house, and you miss a couple payments, they'll come and take it back. But what you don't know is that persons of a different pigment would miss payments,
Wait, how do
and
we
they'll
get
have the
investigation?
option
How do we get an
to refinance.
investigation? How do we get an investigation into the banking sector in Trinidad and Tobago? I want to tell you something. This is a fact. In 2008, when the housing bubble burst, Freddie Mae and Freddie Mac collapsed in the United States of America, the United States
Mhm.
Congress met continuously until they solved one problem. The American
Well,
presidential campaign paused itself, and everybody turned themselves to this same problem. And the problem they turned their minds to was how to put credit back into the economy. Now that the economy has collapsed, because it collapsed, it was pulling India down, it was pulling Brazil down. I remember there was a contagion that was threatening to spread across the world. In fact, that 2008 Freddie Mae, Freddie Mac housing bubble collapse is what evaporated a lot of Clico money that allowed the then vicious and bad mind Patrick Manning to pull NGZ money and collapse Dupre. That was the throw over. But the point I want to make to you is nobody in Trinidad and Tobago talks about credit. Nobody in Trinidad and Tobago talks about the finance it takes to set up a business. And I have said Mario Sabga Aboud should be given the Trinity Cross, paid handsomely a salary, and sent to talk to businesses for the rest of his life because he knows a magic trick that no other businessman knows. Mario Sabga Aboud opened 126 stores in this country in 10 years. He said this to the world, and I worked that out to be one store a month for 10 years. And he opened one store a month for 10 years. And that requires two different types of credit. That requires startup credit and operation credit. You will obviously, at some point in the development of your empire, reach a point where all of your businesses contribute profit, and that profit will finance future development. But that is not at the start, and that is not in the first 30 to 40%. And I don't know why the government doesn't put Mario Sabga Aboud on a salary so he could guide the rest of the businessmen in the country who would like to open one store, much less 126, who have one store and would like to open one branch. Because it takes credit to operate your business in the start of the business when your expenses exceed your income and your capacity to generate profit. And there are businesses in this country that are opening a mile a minute. There are small businesses, children that come back from university And in 2 years, 7 branches of some franchise. And that takes a lot of money. Where does that money come from? And why isn't the Equal Opportunity Commission set up to look into the practices of the financial sector? Because it is trying to come across. And I have heard people tell me, Susie Hadid attacks me all over Facebook and tell me if there's one thing Syrian people know is hard work, and I have no doubt. My father Syrian, Tara Blackie Syrian, Rudy Kuri Syrian, Paul Sabka Syrian. These are Syrian people that I know my whole life. But I want to tell you something. If hard work alone was doing it, the marketplace would be a little more diverse. It wouldn't be just one small group of people being able to own up and buy up everything. The banking
Correct.
sector in Trinidad and Tobago is not treating everybody equally, and an investigation has to be done into that. How do you do that?
So who owns the banks? Who owns the finance companies? The people who own the banks and control the banks and the finance companies are the same people who own the People's National Movement. So that it would always be set up so that the owners of the People's National Movement would always be able to get credit and credit forgiveness. No one else gets that kind of credit forgiveness. And that has been historically the case. And it, it is not going to change. It is not going to change, and nothing changes unless there's revolution. I don't want to say violent revolution because that is not what I mean. But changes don't happen incrementally. The more you try to change things incrementally, the system will adjust to keep you right where you belong, to keep you in your place. So the change is not going to happen unless there's a movement, which will not happen in this country. If there is a movement
I take
among
umbrage to
um, the middle
the
class and
lowest
the
class.
lower middle class, yeah, if there's a movement where they decide they're going to boycott all of these big businesses and decide, look, we are only going to support the neighborhood parlors and so on. But again, it would be of limited effect because the neighborhood parlors would get their goods from the same distributors and so on. It's so entrenched. But what you can do bit by bit is lock off the the rituals and the Starbucks and all the retail outlets, and we open our own retail outlets, and we
You bring up
patronize our own.
you bring up rituals and
Mhm.
Starbucks. How come Hong Wing? And how come they have nobody with a chain of Hong Wing stores? How come? The best coffee in the world. How come Lavazza and Illy and all of these brands could come down here and dominate Trinidad? Imported from foreign jurisdictions, one from Italy, one from America, come all the way to Trinidad and still make profit, and our own Trinidad coffee can't go nowhere. How come? How come?
Uh, the answer could only be that the banks and finance companies are willing to facilitate some people with lines of credit, whereas they wouldn't facilitate others. So that there are there are people who can open businesses with no money. I've seen that they've had no money, and they pitch an idea, and it sounds feasible. The banks, of course, would argue that they did a feasibility study and it's feasible, and they'll take the risk and they'll impose a, a higher interest than is necessary, but it's lower than what we pay in any event, you and I would pay. And if there's some default, they are always willing to extend credit to you wouldn't necessarily go in the red. Increase your overdraft and so on. They'll do everything to facilitate you, and that right there is the problem. How come? Listen, Max Senhouse could have been courts the way he started, but when he tried to expand, that's where he went bust. And he's not the only one. There are many others like him. And to get out of that mold, you have to get into politics. So that's why you have a few of the rich East Indians. They got into politics. They are not necessarily Hindu, they are more Presbyterian and so on, and Presbyterian and Muslims. And those are the ones the PNM gravitate to because it's also religious. You have to understand Eric Williams, it's also religious. So that um, Islam is an Abrahamic religion, just like Christianity and all these things. And all the Indian Presbyterians, it's the same Christianity. And Eric Williams used that and demonized the ones he termed recalcitrant minority and idol worshippers and so on. But the thing is, those
2020.
mhm,
This is 2020. We informed, we educated, we have access to
that's
global information. We still being separated by tribe and religion.
yes we are. Yes we are. And we are listen, I see there's this one hit wonder Calypsonian going up for San Juan Barrett area. Right? Help me with his name. And
JW.
right, something like that. And the thing is, he wouldn't be popular with me because I'm old, but he's very popular with the youth. The youth would not come out and vote for the PNM. In fact, the youth are very disenchanted with the PNM. So it was a very smart move when I reflected on it to bring a chap like that and put him in San Juan Barrett area where he is unlikely to win. There's no other candidate who can put up a fight because the Muslims have been demonized in the last 5 years by the PNM. They even have Nafisa Mohammed, who seems to be working against the PNM in Samo Barrett area. But the PNM is not popular with the Muslim community. So they have to rely on My Tower and all these other places north of the bus route to win. And to do that, they'll have to bring out their base. But the spillover with that chap is when he appears on a PNM platform at all the big rallies and so on, he'll come on and he'll balance, and the whole crowd will go this way, and then the whole crowd will go that way, and it's party, and you forget the last 5 years, and you are moved to come out and support him, and if not him, to support whichever candidate in whichever constituency that's wearing red. So it's again, it's marketing and marketing for the stupid because most people um, would forget what happened in the last 5 years. They're not concerned with that. It's a good time. It's how you make me feel. And if I go and I balance to the left and to the right and for a few rallies and a drink and you throw rum at me and free food and all that jazz, come election, they are voting for you. And that's what it is. And his um, personality, the cult of his personality, although he's a one hit wonder, would spill over and attract the younger those persons who are moving away from the PNM. So it's a brilliant strategy, but that's the only global strategy. But what they also do is they'll target different communities, the Muslims, and they're not going to target the Hindus. The Hindus generally, they were educated in cowsheds, according to Satmaraj and so on. But while they were being demonized by Eric Williams back in the 60s and 70s, they were working hard. And as much as you demonize the Hindus, they were doing a lot better than the children of Africa. Their values were different to the children of Africa. And
But
that's
the
why you.
because they were marginalized and excommunicated from mainstream political dominated society, the East Indians and the Hindu based East Indian community had to revert to their own culture to build their communities. Yeah? And
They had to be resourceful.
I remember talking to this
When
guy in Lebanese. I don't know if Lebanese house still exists, but he was
mhm,
working in his house. I guess he was a floor manager. Elderly Indian chap, simple guy. And in the conversation, he explained to me because then They didn't have the amount of free university they have now. And he explained to me how he got to put his children through school. And he went and he
Mm.
brought a Pepsi for me, Wayne. And that
Come on.
man tell me a Pepsi bottle. And he said every day my wife would get up and make two sada roti sandwiches for me with something, probably something left over from dinner last night. That's my lunch for today. And at quarter to 12, I will take this bottle and I'll walk down to the corner shop and redeem it and pay the difference for another Pepsi. Come back to work and have my lunch. And he said that is the type of savings that he saved. He said, I own nothing fashionable. Everything I have I spent on my children. He said one is a doctor, one is a lawyer, both doing fabulously well. And he's still only working now in this place because he don't want to be bored home. His children could take care of him. Somebody said to me that the cultural differences was that the PNM misled the grandchildren of Africa into thinking life is a constant party, eat what on your plate now. Whereas the East Indian community, who were marginalized and were not did not have access to the gravy train under the boom and the Dude and the URPs and all the other handouts that the PNM was doing for their finances, they had to ban the jaw. But in doing that, they developed savings and ended up owning land and property. And now the children of that first generation are widely educated doctors, lawyers, engineers all over the world. Why is it that nobody has come up in the ranks of the grandchildren of Africa to want to lead them away from the madness of the PNM?
But it's wrong to think that no one came up. Makandal Daga came up, Morgan Job came up, and one or two others like them. And what happened? The minute you show your face and you start talking the truth, and the truth is not palatable to the PNM, they'll get rid of you. So I was talking to a colleague who is a lawyer and a PNM lawyer, and he was saying, I grew up hating Morgan Job, and only now I am seeing the truth in everything he was saying. Morgan Job was hated, but he spoke the truth, and he was hated mostly
Maybe
by
his
members.
maybe maybe the truth was the way he was saying it. I don't know. I'm just hearing that
No, it's
sometimes
not.
people say,
No, 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 no.
and I want to tell
The
you,
speak, I speak.
you take people in this country, and I tell people that all over the world there are grandchildren of Africa from Trinidad and Tobago who got a chance in other first world countries or developed countries or countries where they get an opportunity to maximize their potential and they go incandescent. We have trainees at the pinnacle of every profession in the world, and a lot of them black. So it's not like we have a problem with different types of people and their ability to go forward and progress. It is obviously the system is keeping some people back.
But if
That
those
conversation,
people, if they lived here, they would not have had the type of success that
no,
they enjoyed abroad. That's the first thing. The second thing
no.
is, listen, look at the children of Makanda Daga, for instance. And if you understand Makanda Daga, his values are very different to the ordinary black man. But Makanda Daga and Morgan Job, they came with the truth. A speaker of truth has no friends. So he gave them what the truth was. He started giving them the truth in 70. And Eric Williams, who is leading a black party, used the law to go after Makanda Daga at a time when you would think that he would join hands with Makanda Daga and um, take on the system, the banks, and so on. He pretended that he was changing things in the bank because the truth is the movement was so strong and it was so obvious that the children of Africa and the children of India who had joined together, the blacks and the Indians, they walked together in 1970. And because of the strength of that movement, change had to come in private enterprise. But it's not Eric Williams who changed it. Eric Williams changed it because he had no choice and gave the impression that he changed it because he had a lot of good intentions and so on. If he wanted to change it, he would have changed it since 62
But
or
wait,
66. He never had an intention of changing anything. And the thing is, the minute you come out and you tell um, the black man, and I'm not saying that the East Indian community and the Hindu community don't have their issues, and I'm not saying everybody in the East Indian community and the Hindu community are scholarship winners. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that there's a greater proportion of Hindus and East Indians who are doing better in the schools and so on, and academia and so on, than the children of Africa. That's what I'm saying. But the thing is,
but you mean
it's
percentage
changing.
wise,
Mhm.
percentage
Percentage
wise,
wise.
because
Percentage
they
wise.
are because they are people who of every race that thrive and do very very well. Yeah,
Yes, yes. But why is there a greater percentage of persons of African descent living below the poverty line? Why is there a greater percentage, or why is the greatest percentage of persons in the person population before the courts persons of African descent? Right? So it's a lot of factors, but a lot of it stems from culture and the children
political
of
political culture,
sorry,
political
no,
culture.
it's no, the politics would drive the culture. The politics would take advantage
I agree
of
with
the
that.
culture. That is what
Yeah,
happened. So that Eric Williams had no great desire, like his counterpart from Singapore, to to make Trinidad a better
okay.
place. He had no
I need
great
to say,
desire to do
but I need to say this:
that.
the reason, and I've been a student of human nature in this country for all of my life, and what I have found is that the reason people, especially dark skinned people, but especially grandchildren of Africa, the reason they don't boycott and the reason they don't riot unless they have absolutely no choice is that they're basically an easygoing people and they're very trusting. And I think that that is what is doing them wrong, that every single time they're good, they're trusting, they're being abused by this PNM. And they, but, and
No,
they've been left,
I,
huh?
I want to disagree with you. They're not trusting. They're not trusting. What
But on the
what
ground, Trinidad is not a racist
happened?
country. On the ground, we don't practice race. I do not see racism. I have never encountered it really. The way it happens politically, people get racially, politically, it always comes across like an aberration and a shock. Because on the ground,
That
we're not like
mhm. That is why I just told you that the politicians take advantage of the culture and they spur that. If you look at, listen, I've been on Facebook for how many years? I don't know. But quite apart from Facebook, I grew up in Serrano Road, Belmont. They probably had two or three Indian families up there, and but it's mostly black. And the thing is, you never get racism from either side because that's poor. That's a poor place. But when became a lawyer, or going through life, and you move out of the neighborhood and you are exposed to different life experiences, the people who tend to be more racist, which is ironic, the people who tend to be more racist are the people, the blacks in Trinidad who tend to be more racist happen to be the more educated blacks. Because the ordinary black man don't have time for that. He doesn't have time for that. He doesn't have that kind of malice or pettiness. He sees that he limes with the
that.
Indian brother. Hmm?
Why you think that
Sorry?
is? Do you think that is education or miseducation? I don't know if that's education. I see where you're going with that, and I want to tell you something. The people who become more isolated in one culture, and you could tell because if I wanted to return to any of my roots, let's say I show up in the conversation dressed like an Arab or talking Arab or like Portuguese, Arab, I have all kind of thing in me. But if somebody was just concentrating on their identity from a racial, cultural point of view, they change their name to that, and everything for them is a post from historic hurts and pains past, then you know that that's a miseducation because real education, no matter what, has to be about getting all of us to the same place, level the play field, and we go forward from there.
True. But let me ask you, what has Cameron done for black people in this country? What has
Who?
Pearl and Two Springer done for
No,
Pearl and Two Springer
these
and
are convenient activists. These are convenient activists. I almost put on my dashiki too at the start of the show. These are convenient activists that put on a dashiki just in time for Emancipation Day to collect their handout and mislead their brothers and sisters again. So I'm asking you, and I'm asking you a second question because 35% of the combined vote could be considered the black community, that the PNM, if you isolated it. But that community, I feel that the rest of Trinidad and Tobago needs to make inroads and help them escape the PNM because the PNM is going to destroy them and by extension the rest of Trinidad and Tobago.
going to escape the PNM because listen, we grew up, it's still taught in schools that Calypso is our culture. They wouldn't teach you in school that chutney is your culture. I mean, and there are chutney songs that are as depraved as some wine and jam calypsos, right? But they would never tell you that um, playing tassa is your culture and that sort of thing. It's mostly one-sided. That's the first thing. And you see, the thing is, you grow up with a sense of fear and guilt that my mother is this way and vote PNM or she live of my grandfather, my grandmother, and so on. And the PNM give me a house to live in, right? A HGC house. Never mind, they
A
put
woman
you
just come on one
in
woman just come on one of my head. No liars. You saying that? Tell me I should be shamed. All of we should be shamed. Eric Williams give all of our education and we're using that education against the poor PNM. She don't tell me
no,
that.
Eric Williams. Eric Williams, and you have to get this correct. Eric Williams did not give anybody an education. Eric Williams did what he was mandated to do. We were a signatory. We were a colony of Britain, and we all signed on to this treaty where we'll have universal
Was
education,
St. Mary's College
primary and whatever.
established in Trinidad in 1863. Queen's Royal College established in 1904. I think Fatima College was 1913. All of these predated the independent nation state of Trinidad and Tobago and any concept of a PNM or a People's National Movement. In fact, I put to you that the schools that Eric Williams met are still thriving and prospering, whereas a lot of what he built has just taken advantage of poor people and left it, wasted 5 years of their children's good lives. The
He
PNM
built.
education,
That's what I keep telling you about PNM education. They built junior secondaries and so on, and half day school. And the thing is, they had a chance to make that work, and they didn't. The quality of education in those schools cannot be compared to the quality of of education in the prestige schools. That's the first thing. But again, I was coming back to this thing where the PNM has aligned itself with culture. So that's why the PNM they can continue to prop up a calypso tent where there are more band members and backup singers on stage than there are people in the audience. And they'll give them money every year because what they are singing is in favor of the PNM and they demonize all who are against the PNM. And you grow up
boss.
hearing
This
that
year,
free of
when you
charge.
say that this year, a calypso, a calypso finalist told me 13 of the calypsonians get a salary from the PNM in some way, form, or fashion.
Mhm.
13 of them that was
Right.
going forward.
So Blaze, what's his name? JW. That's no secret. So they basically profit off of that. They profit off of culture. They've aligned themselves to culture. This is our culture. Carnival is our culture. It's a black thing, and and all that. And you, the minute you get warped into this thing, and after all that, they tell you, well, look, we give you free education, right? And in fact, we're giving you education. That's the first thing. That was a lie. You were entitled to it. We signed a treaty, we were entitled to it. So Eric Williams didn't give you anything. He didn't do you a favor. He gave you something to which you were entitled to, and which in any event existed before, but on a smaller scale. But by signing on to the UN Declaration, there was a guarantee that there would be free education, primary and so on, universal and whatever. And we grew up thinking that Eric Williams did us a favor and gave us that. And that's wrong. That's one of the first things. So, and Eric and PNM is the party of Eric Williams. So how dare you go against it? And then you see the thing is, they there are so many different ways they inculcate into your psyche that you would be betraying your ancestors and betraying black culture and blackness and PNM if you vote anything else but the
So,
PNM.
so when you have to
They'll
ask,
give you
have to
mhm.
ask you a question.
They'll give you a house. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, finish. But I want to ask you a question.
No,
Finish that thought.
they'll give you a house, and in fact, the rent might be $3 a month, and you never pay it, and they just would not kick you out because they are sure you have five, six, seven children or family members in the house. That's votes coming up, right? So they keep you in bondage. The PNM has
Incul-
replaced the British slave master. Yeah, they've
Inculcated is the word.
inculcated. Yeah, and that's
But
what
I'll
a
ask you,
PNM education is.
but I'll ask you this question then.
Mhm.
How do, how do we fix that? I mean, I'm still saying the age of information, the internet, the ready availability of smartphones and access to global culture and global information has to be making people ask questions about their reality and knowing the kind of money that pass through the country and seeing people who just show up and getting all kind of benefits. And I'm not talking about small benefits. I mean the PNM voters who holding on to the house and wherever handout they get in, they have to be seeing the $1 million contracts and hearing the numbers like 50 million, 70 million, 80 million, 100 million. A woman have a contract to mow the lawns that HDC people live in and she live in fairways. They
Well,
have
how
to be
does it
seeing
change?
when they but aren't they seeing this? Aren't they seeing it?
They are, but they are fed this story that this is your lot in life, and you are doing well because you have a job we got a job for you in telco, which is now TSCT or B Mobile or whatever. We got a job for you in WASA. We got a job for you in TN Tech, and they'll give you little things to rope you in and keep you. And no matter how educated you get, guilt is a hell of a thing. You are not going to go against the tribe. The most you will do, as happened in 2010, is you'll stay home and not feeling here, and not voting here, this wrongs. But I'm not giving the other side my vote. That's the most they'll do. And let me tell you something about education. A lot of people didn't have, we have the internet now, but when I was about 11, I was 12. It was too late for me. My mother bought a set of encyclopedia. And if she had purchased that before, long before common entrance, I'm sure things would have been different. But the thing is, you were limited to what you were taught in school. And then when you get your Collier's encyclopedia, it was Collier's, you would see that a lot of what they taught in school, quite frankly, wasn't true. All that stuff about the pitch lake and all that jazz, it wasn't true. You had greater access to communication, to information by virtue of an encyclopedia. Now you have the internet. And with the internet, Um, it it presented an opportunity to expand your knowledge base. And 2010 to 2015, the children got laptops to move them into the information age. Um, they'll be tech savvy. They'll have access to the internet, all of this information, and not be limited. And then come 2015, they disbanded that because education is anathema to the PNM. If you are truly educated, that is anathema to the PNM. The PNM hates that. They don't want you to know more than they tell you. They tell you how to think. They give you what you have to regurgitate. And that's that. So that we educate you to the point that you can work in the public service, that you could pass the police exams, that you could pass the prisons exams, that you will always, in short, be an employee, right? They don't teach you risk and that sort of thing in school. A lot of things, life skills that they're supposed to teach you, they don't teach you. They teach you a lot of stuff that is irrelevant to life. But you had a chance up to 2015 so that your children's knowledge base would be expanded, right? Let me tell you this, Philip. My children go to what they call a prestige primary school. And my son in first year is writing cursive. That happened in standard two when I was in Belmont Boys RC. That's just one example. But a lot of the
Wait,
stuff that he is learning
are
is
you
he's
a,
way ahead of us.
are you a 1%?
Huh?
Are you a
Sorry?
1%? Are you a
No, I'm
1%?
not. No,
Because
I'm not.
you sound very rich. You talk like you're very, very rich.
No, I'm not rich. I'm not rich. I am paying a mortgage and I live from
But
month to month.
I was pulling your leg. I was just pulling your leg.
But
Continue with your
no,
just.
no, but no. But listen, um, there was a time my first daughter she went to St. Teresa's, and when the teachers on strike, the teachers on strike, and then some of them when they come to school, they don't teach. When you open the book, I was wondering if my child was backward or wayward, my first daughter, and I was thinking this child is too intelligent to not know certain things. And I took her and to take the test to this. I wouldn't say which school it is. You would know which school it is. And she passed the test and she got in, and it was a totally different thing. Now she's in line for a scholarship next year. Um, in accounts, I think it is. She came seventh in the Caribbean in Cape One in accounts. Right? I'm not a one percenter. Right? But what I want to tell you about all this is when you look at the programs in the primary schools, the government schools, and you compare it to the programs in the prestige schools, one of the advantages the prestige schools always had over the public schools would have been access to information. And I think the playing field was somewhat leveled in secondary school from 2010 to 2015 with the provision of these laptops. And look at this now, pandemic time, and you are now rushing to get laptops. The government is now rushing and looking to see which um, financier or which business could help children to get laptops and so on. Why did they not continue that? They didn't continue that because they don't want you to be educated beyond a certain point. And the poorer children had the advantage of access to education. And a lot of the laptops, you don't need internet, you don't need that sort of thing at home. Poor children who live by the river and don't have no electricity could charge up the laptop in school, come home in the night, and depending on the device, I think some of the devices would be equipped with like the ones I have, where you have wireless internet. And even if you don't, that's something that could be configured. So now I heard people making the argument that the laptops would have been useless, it wouldn't have helped because the children would not have had um, access to the internet. That's something so easy. In 2015, you promised island-wide Wi-Fi. We
Why?
still don't have it, right? But during the pandemic, if you didn't do it then, you could have done it now, and these same children could have had online schooling like mine have right now. So every morning I have to wake up in time to make sure they're in front of the computer and they're getting taught, right? Why should the children of prestige schools have a greater advantage than everyone else when
Okay,
just
so
five years or less than 5 years? Hmm.
you are saying that the only way for the grandchildren of Africa growing in Trinidad and Tobago under a PNM political director, the only way for them to escape the trap that they're in is to
Hmm.
escape the PNM and to take a chance on something else. It can't
The,
get worse.
the PNM,
It
the
can't get
PNM in its
your
present.
school
Um,
is the worst. If you're
mhm.
left behind, if you break out of that and you educate yourself and you have a design, you have a plan, but you can't get any kind of finance and you can't get any kind of assistance to give you a leg up. You're trapped and you blink 3 times and you're 40 years old, you're married, you have 2 children, and you're working private taxi and you're security in somebody's business. I have spoken to security guards and waitresses, Wayne, and their stories break my heart. The people have potential, they have intention, they have passion for what they want to do, and they're trapped and they're stuck in a cycle, and they're raising children in that same cycle to be stuck there again.
Well, the only way out is education, but it must not be the type of education that limits you to what the government wants you to be educated about. It must be the type of education that would expand your horizons so that you are not limited to the dogma or the ideologies passed down by Eric Williams, or which a lot of it is still um, extant. We still think like Marxists. You know that? With all the education, because our education teaches us to think like Marxists, to hate America, to want equality for everybody without work and so on. Yeah, a lot of benefits to socialism, I agree. Yeah, a lot of benefits to Marxism, I agree. But Marxism is outdated. But
Is that don't make the news. Practice a mix of socialist capitalism. And I used to say a long time ago, capitalism without compassion is a prescription for confusion. And I guess that's what you're saying.
yeah, exactly. But what what I'm saying is when children have access not to what you put in the curriculum and what you limit them to, when they have access to the World Wide Web, they have access to different cultures, they have access to different ways of thinking, different ideologies. And a lot of what we teach them to fear and to demonize, when they're exposed to other things, then they'll know, well, listen, they'll be able to ask questions. Because you don't know something unless you can ask questions about it, searching questions. And we are not there. We are taught to regurgitate. And until we are taught, until university, even in universities, regurgitation. I mean, I remember going to Heward and I remember on my first assignment in Heward, um, I had some ideas and I wanted to put in. And I can't remember if it was Wendy Fitzwilliam or the now Justice Kevin. We call him Pig. Um, and he said, "Listen, man, you see all that about your ideas and things. Leave that for when you go out into practice. When you come to institutions like these, this is the answer they want. This is the information they want on the paper. So when you see these keywords, you
No
just write these
critical thinking.
keywords.
No critical
Hmm?
thinking. Regurgitation is all they want.
But it worked, so I regurgitated. I regurgitated, and I got through because when in Rome, you do as Romans. Eh?
Okay.
But the short point is, when you look
Mhm.
at those who lead the profession, and not just legal profession, all professions. There are persons who are exposed to different life experiences and ideologies and so on, and who can think outside the box. Look at Frank Solomon, for instance. He has moved past any other lawyer in Trinidad and Tobago. Michael de Labastide, same thing. They've moved past, way and beyond others because they are able to think beyond the confines of what is circumscribed. So, for instance, we always think, listen, the law is this, or this is the principle of something, and you can't go beyond that. It is what it is, and that's the end of it. And the truth is, you are supposed to be able to examine the principle and question it and try to extend yourself beyond it. That's the only way you learn. And that's what the human spirit is about. So when you grow up people thinking that this is illegal and that's the end of that. Right? I'm not advocating, for instance, for the gay community. I'll use that as an example, and marijuana as an example. You grow up, think homosexual, Batman, the Bible talk about them, kill Batman and stay away from them, they all have AIDS and all that jazz. And you can't fathom that these are human beings who are entitled to rights in the same way that a criminal is entitled to rights,
The
in
case
the
you
same way
make
as a black person is entitled to rights. And
for
you can't think that because you are taught to demonize and to think a certain way. So that the first time you start hearing about human rights, you say, well, what the hell is that? When you start off hearing about human rights, you say that is something of the devil.
contradict, contradicts everything you believe.
Yeah, but how do you get to that? They're not going to teach you that in school. So again, listen, same daughter, I'll tell you this. From the internet, she has so many ideas, startup businesses and so on. So how is it? And that might be the difference between the one
And
percenters
she
and the
now
rest of
has
us.
an advantage. Of course, it is. The top 10 companies in the world today bought up the top 10 companies in the world 30 years ago. The top 10 companies in the world today were created by individuals out of ideas. Understand this, the future of the development of the world is your daughter's mind, her capacity to pursue her passions, and the ability to access knowledge and, where possible, credit. But credit is not the sole and important driver of business anymore because you don't need to open Walmart and open 5,000 stores. You could have one computer and build Amazon and be the greatest retailer in the world. So it comes down to the opportunity and who's ready to take advantage of that opportunity. We live in an information age. The case that you make for a better education system, it reminded me and it set me looking for the judgment handed down by the Privy Council to Prakash Ramada. And they opened by saying, and it makes your point, that our people are so stagnant and stagnated, our minds are so locked off from how we're supposed to think. They had to say this, and I've always, and since I read this, I said, this is the greatest insult I have ever seen, wrapped up so beautifully that you, if you didn't know, they say tact is the ability to tell a man to go to hell and make him happy to be on his way.
Yeah.
These, this judge who wrote this has a lot of tact. He said, in a free democratic society, it is almost too obvious to need stating. I'm not going to read the rest. But if you tell somebody it's almost too obvious to need stating, you're saying, but you should know this. This seems to be foundation knowledge that you should already have. I'm not supposed to
But
tell you this. Huh?
the tax isn't putting the word almost in there. That's the tax.
Exactly. Knowing, I guess, how to soft sell this. Oh, I have a friend, Derek Gonzalez. And Derek said to me, Trinidadians live in colonies in Trinidad. We're not integrated. We think we're integrated. We're not united. We think we're united. Every now and then, there'll be an event that we go to and we say, all are we in this together? But we're not. You in it from your perspective, and the others are there from their perspective, and you're sharing it. It's like this thing with COVID-19. Somebody said, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. The way it was worded said we are all in the same storm. We're not all in the same boat, and that said something because to a lot of people who were saying, "Hey, all you cool, all yourself, just stay home, relax." And I said, if your kitchen full and your wallet full, your lights and your rent and your mortgage and everything paid, you and your family can hold that down. But for the guy who had to work today to eat today, it's not the same experience for him. If tomorrow catch him home and he wake up with children with an empty kitchen, and then the conversation go, well, don't make no children. I mean, we're living in a real back ass one kind of country where we don't understand that it takes all types. And again, coronavirus taught us that it wasn't the mega millionaires that we needed to carry us through. It was the pedestrian, generic, low bottom of the totem pole workers that kept this country churning over the nurses. Without the nurses, the doctors will collapse. I mean, our medical healthcare professionals, our sanitation professionals, all of these people that stood up and got the job done. And I'm hoping, Wayne, I'm hoping that this experience, together with all of the access to social media and knowledge. I mean, you put out a lot of information. I have a lot of people who put out a lot of good thought-provoking information. I have to keep going, and I guess you do too, hoping that a lot of people are opening their minds to wanting to try something different. Because if we don't, this country over.
Let me give you another example that I had to give someone recently. We grew up knowing marijuana is against the law. Who would have fathomed that you could open a store to sell marijuana? So if you're in Form 5 and you say, listen, man, I think I go and go large scale, I go and do better than the push-up, and I go and open a nice little corner shop and sell a lot of other fragrances, and you can come in and smoke your weed and drink and eat a marijuana cake and so on and so on. And they say, man, you're looking to make a jail for life. you know and listen, this is an actual anecdote. But I went to Belmont Secondary, and it's an actual thing that a guy, it's a good thing I spoke about it. It just came back, and he said, listen, I don't want to be no small pusher, I want to be able to sell my weed and thing in the store. we laughed, and look at where we are at now.
Then
Look at
he
where
was
we
a
are,
visionary.
but the difference is he was a visionary, but he didn't come up with it on his own. He had traveled to England, and from England to Holland, and I think it was a thing in Holland at the time, a
Holland is
long time ago.
yeah, Holland, Amsterdam and Holland is very open with their drug culture.
So he came up with these ideas, and you wouldn't get these ideas unless you travel. Now you don't have to travel, you have the internet, the world will come into your living room or into your phone or your laptop. And the thing is, you have to encourage people to have ideas. And the thing is, the 1% would have an idea and say, listen, this is what I'm going to do and how I'm going to do it. And he'll go to the bank, and the bank will take a chance on him. But the best you will get, well, not you, but me, I'm a lawyer, so it might be a little different to me, but the best a lot of people will get is, yeah, of course, we'll lend you money for a car. Right? Um, they'll hardly lend you money for a house. They'll
Boss, you
think
getting
long and hard about
get, getting unsecured credit for a carnival cost you. You get 10,000 to
it.
play master, blow that, burn that. And anything that could keep you isolated, still dependent, because as long as you're dependent on that paycheck, brother, boss could do you what they want. As long as you are
Hmm.
unhireable and the job market is not competitive. And that's why they're afraid of a lot of the progressive ideas that we bring to the conversation. Because we talk about a banking competition, opening the banking sector to 20 more banks. Open the banking sector to 20 more banks. All of a sudden, banks. Do you know in America, there are banks that if you go and open a bank account with them, they put $400 in your account. They put money
Hmm.
in your account for you. When you go to open a bank account in China, you go RBC or Republic Bank of Scotia, they ask you, so how will you be paying your fees? Monthly, quarterly, annually. You have no interest to get. And because the banks in Trinidad are not regulated, because there are no laws that determine that the banks have to pay depositors interest, the banks no longer have to put credit to try and make back that interest. And that's why it is a double whammy. Because when you talk about 1% to get an idea and go to the bank, 1% don't get an idea and go to the bank, 1% get an idea and go to daddy, and go to uncle, and go to cousin Timmy. And all of them could write a check. Because all of them sit on money. I have heard stories about people, and I ain't calling nobody name, who days before the end of the Blue Note exchange, families were called together and 100,000 cash hand out to people. Hey, if you get change, is yours. Because they know they can't do nothing with it again. There are people in this
I heard
country,
that.
I mean, there are $1 trillion passed through this country with just budgets. Forget all the rest of the money that we know passed through the country. We've had budgets from 1962 to now totaling $1 trillion. That's $1,000 billion. Look around Trinidad and Tobago and tell me what we got for that money. All we did was create a set of overnight millionaires and billionaires. That's what we did with that money.
We
All
got a
reality
stadium
has
in Tuba for 1 billion. That's 1 billion. So we have 999 billion to conquer.
before I wrap it up, I had to throw one, I had to bowl one googly. Brother Lima always tell me that you gotta look out for the googly. So this is the one googly in the whole game, right? Your political career, is it on pause?
Is that an end? It's at an end.
Is it on pause? Have you stuck a pen? Have you stuck a pen and you're gonna come back at it when you feel that the time is right and the temperature is correct and the environment is perfect and people's minds are open and there's a chance to do what Lee Kuan Yew did in Singapore and redevelop the country and get our population 10 million people it should be and get our GDP to the 400 billion a year it should be as opposed to the 22 billion it is now, and really develop and open up Trinidad and Tobago and set goals like food independence and water for all realistically. In those
One man,
times,
one man cannot change a system. I went into politics, encouraged by friends, thinking that maybe with the ideas we had, it wasn't just me. I wouldn't take credit for all of it. Even PNM lawyers, and we decided we wanted to change the criminal justice system, and we put forward our ideas. But if you're one man, you're not going to change the system, and the system is set up in a way to make money for certain people. And if your change is going to cost people to lose their livelihoods, there's not going to be any change. And I personally, I think politics was a big mistake for me. I don't regret it. I have very few regrets in life, but I think it was a mistake because I could have continued making the money I was making as a lawyer in private
you would have
practice.
been a 1% by
And
now.
yeah, and the thing is, what I did, thinking I would get into it eventually and try to make changes and so on, I started dividing myself in half and then in thirds and got into politics. And imagine getting state briefs and turning night into day to work. It's not like I didn't work for the money. I worked for it. I really did work for it. And because you got state briefs, you got demonized. So people, and because you're in the yellow party, when you stand up in front of a jury now, they hate you anyway because they are not interested in what you have to say. What you have to say is first of all, jaundiced by turmeric. They sprinkle turmeric on you, and that's the end of you, right? So, and that's the nature of politics in this country. So that I think I made a mistake because I could have gone my merry way and did what I was doing, and I um, might have had about 3 houses by now or something, and not be paying a mortgage. And politics slowed me down. it really did slow me down, but I really did make an effort in terms of contributions to see changes in the criminal justice system. But there is no desire for change. And now, because in recognition of how bad the system has failed, um, there's a movement now to abolish something called court holidays. Every country in the world, my pal Murphy was saying today, even Russia, he said that jokingly because when I asked him if he researched it, he said no. But the thing is, every civilized country in this world has court holidays. And what the judges are saying now, a couple of there's this movement to say let's abolish court holidays so that the court can sit right through the year. And when we asked what was the rationale, they said, well, the rationale is to let the public know that the judges are working, that they care about them, and we're working right through the year, and we're not even taking holidays. BS, right? And you would only get that desperate to do that because you realize that the public is onto you, that you were doing nothing, that you were wasting people's time. The judiciary has been at its lowest. And I talk about it as an institution, but there are individual judges, many individual judges who are very, very good judges. But in terms of
Exactly,
the
and
actual administrator,
they're going to
sorry?
rely on they're going to rely on activist attorneys like your good self to get back into politics if the environment is correct and undo and redo all of the things that are wrong with the system. So
Let somebody else do it.
your
Let
unfortunately,
somebody else do
sir.
that, not me.
Fortunately, sir, we've tried that and it didn't work. We've allowed somebody else to do it and it just didn't work out. So we need to assemble the Avengers and we need to get all the bright and good and decent people to give up our next 5 years and just fix all of it so that we can
I,
retire in
I
a
don't
country.
know if Superman is an agenda, an Avenger, but I threw away my Superman underwear, so I can't be an Avenger anymore. I think I'm wearing a
Let me
Spider-Man
say
right
the
now.
fun too. Let me say the fun too. We get these superheroes. We get these superheroes together. And but seriously, the good and the decent people, the people who have demonstrated a willingness to fight for a better Trinidad and Tobago regardless and in spite of. And I'm telling you, there are very few good and decent attorneys that I could think of that would put country above profit like you did. So
But
I hear you.
but
I hear you. But I'm saying there's always room to revisit the conversation. You never know what the future holds, yes?
yeah, I agree with that. I agree.
I want to thank you, sir, for joining us tonight on Plain Talk. We've been pursuing you. I do not know how Satish finally pinned you down to this interview tonight, but I want to thank him. I want to thank you. And yeah, so we tell every guest that come on the show for your closing comments. Take as much time as you need. Make your points.
No, I want to first of all thank you for having me on. It was fun. Um, it's an election year, so the only points I would make, I'm not going to advocate for either party. That's what you have to do is you have to think about what has transpired in the last 5 years, and if you want 5 more years of that, then then you can go for it. But if the last 5 years hasn't worked for you, then I think look for change somewhere else. The yellow party, the orange party, whichever, just not the red party. And I can't see in good conscience how what we've seen over the last 5 years, if people would want 5 more years of that. The people who would want 5 more years of that would be the people who benefited, the amalgamateds and the prestige holdings and Prime Minister Mute and people like him would love another 5 years. But the average Joe, um, things didn't work out for the average man in the last 5 years. And I think we owe it to ourselves to make a change in for the next 5 years. No matter, even if you have to hold your nose to vote for somebody else, I think we need to do that. We owe it to our children to make a change. I cannot see, I might be dead, who knows, but I cannot see this country continuing in this way for 5 more years. I really cannot. And I hope, without taking up too much time, I'll close now. I hope that Trinidadians can get serious. Really need to get serious and examine um, what has happened and not be fooled by the promises of the changes they intend to make, because the PNM is very good at that. They say they understand that Maxi Coffee was a waste. We're not going to send him back up. We're not going to send back up Shamfa. We're not going to send back up Garcia. We wouldn't send up Olivieri. We wouldn't send up Lovell Francis. They could tell you all of that. They could say, yes, we take your concerns on board. They didn't work out. They were crap, and we're replacing them. But that is how the PNM has always operated. It's always a clique, a small clique, not necessarily of competent people, people of reasonable competence, but with an agenda to fill the pockets of the owners of the PNM. That's how it always was. And the rest basically is a pickup side. And we can't continue like that no more. We have to start somewhere else. We have to make a change. And even if we go back to the Yellow Party, at least it's an opportunity to move in a different direction. Um, and we didn't hold the Red Party to the high standards we held the Yellow Party to. The Yellow Party had lots of resignations and firings. We didn't have that in this party, in this 5 years with the Red Party. We need to, I'm not saying we lower our standards, because I mean, this is the lowest we've reached. With Keith Rowley as Prime Minister, who pretended to be Obama and really was Trump, like me, children all over the place. That's not Obama, that's Trump. Um, if Keith Rowley could be Prime Minister, anybody could be Prime Minister. We reached the lowest. So I think the only way from here is up. And it doesn't matter who we try, but when they bring whoever comes back in, or whoever comes in, apart from the Red Party, we have to make it our business to keep whoever comes in to a very high standard and not the low standard we've been accustomed to over the last 5 years. That's my closing thoughts. And it was fun.
Indeed.
Thanks for having me.
I want to tell you something. I've had three actual sitting members of the UNC on this show in the past 2 weeks, and none of them were brave enough to advocate for the UNC. And you, who out of politics, used your closing comments, and I have to respect that. But joke and fun aside, it was an enjoyable interview. And I just want to point out something to you that I think you'll find funny. That you had a closing comment that you could have talked about anything in the world to make your point, and you are an attorney first, and you say that you are out of politics, but your entire closing comment was politics. Wayne,
No, politics
I
is
won't
right, Philip.
stop your urge. I want to tell you thank you very much for joining us tonight, and we'll talk again soon. Yeah,
Take
Trinidad
it
and
easy.
Tobago. That is how that is how the conversation goes with Wayne Sturge. You take the serious and the funny, and you go forward. But he always has an abundance of serious information to give. He's a wealth of knowledge, brilliant attorney, and is again another one of the people that I point out to you that are a resource to this nation to rebuild itself. If you want that, give people like Wayne Sturge incentive to come back and serve. It's not about the money. They have no money in Trinidad anymore. Trinidad broken and in debt. Anybody who come to help Trinidad right now, come in to fix Trinidad and Tobago. They have no money to get. Nobody. We knocking on the IMF door. We knocking on the IMF door. After IMF is open prostitution. That's the truth. Check it out. We are the bottom rung of the bottom ladder. We need people like Wayne Sturge back in the politics. And the only way that happening is if people, all of us, come together as one people under one flag and decide to stand up as, for country first. Nothing else is going to matter. Tomorrow night, I'm going to have Devat Maraj to do a weekend review wrap up, and we're going to be trying that tomorrow night. Monday night, I have Louis Leasing, former mayor of Port of Spain, joining us for the conversation. On Tuesday, we're supposed to be having somebody here from the American Chamber of Commerce to talk about all of the issues that are affecting us post COVID-19 and other things that are going on in the public space between Trinidad and the United States of America. That should be an interesting conversation. We have a lot of other good guests waiting to confirm their schedules and sign on. But you could tell by now that Plain Talk attracts the best and the brightest and is a beacon of hope for a better tomorrow and a better Trinidad and Tobago. So if that's what you want for you and your future self and your loved ones and your children, then at least open your mind to the concept that better could be done if we all wanted better. Until tomorrow, stay safe, Trinidad and Tobago.